Hello and welcome to another interview on The Rational National. I'm joined now by Chris Flynn. He's a member of the organizing committee for the Global Lush Union. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, dude, thanks for having me. Really excited to be on.
No problem. So tell me about first Cosmetics and how they have represented themselves as a company, and then we'll get to what you're pushing for.
Okay. So for those who don't know, Lush Cosmetics is a cosmetics company. Deal with a lot like bath bombs, shampoos, shower gels, stuff like that. What separates them from other companies is they build themselves as an ethical cosmetics company. So that started sort of the legend of the company, if you will, starts in the mid 90s in the UK, where they split off from the Body Shop with an avowed statement to not animal test. And that's kind of where they started. From there, they really dived into that, been very involved in the environmental movement, and a number of other things. So campaigns that have been going on since I worked there involve sort of migrant justice, migrant rights, trans rights, other LGBTQ plus rights, Black Lives Matter. And one of the things which is going to be on topic today is the workers' rights. So in their ethical buying policy, they talk about the rights of workers to collectively bargain and to be represented by trade unions. And I mean, I think these are all really good values, but only so good as far as they're followed through on. And in our view, they have not followed through on a number of those.
Yeah, so let's get to that. So this company obviously, shows itself as or tries to present itself as a very progressive, forward-thinking company, including all workers' rights. But last month, I believe the National Labor Relations Board concluded that Lush Cosmetics illegally interrogated a worker over their union activity, clearly showing you that maybe they don't operate the same way that they present themselves. So tell me a little more about that, as well as other union-busting activities that Lush Cosmetics have been engaged in.
Yeah, so specifically the NLRB charge comes from the States, and where I work is in Toronto, Ontario. But that charge is rooted in after we started the union drive, the company had put out a bunch of anti-union material, and we had one person, a great guy from California, who had written some stuff on the company's sort of internal message boards called the Hive. So they'll post stuff and you can comment on it. He commented on a couple of things about sort of democracy and immigrant rights, and talking about how these things are related to union rights, because he had heard about the ongoing anti-union campaign. The company had sent somebody down from HR to talk to him, pulled him into a meeting, said, like, what do you know about unions? What do you know about the union in Toronto? Like, who are you talking to? Do you really want a union? Do you know what that means? And his manager, he went so far as to say, before you post anything on the Hive, run it by me first. And so he was appalled by this, and we all were. And so we filed a charge against the National Labor Relations Board. And he's not the only person that's happened to. I mean, I have to suspect that other people have had similar experiences. And what's wild about that is that the union drive started in Toronto in the warehouse where I was working. He was voicing support for that from a store in California.
Mm-hmm.
And the company went so far as to pull him aside to interrogate him. At the same time, they were doing a lot of stuff. It just shows what the whole anti-union thing does. And I can get more into detail about what went on in Toronto too. But the message I really want to get across is how much pressure a company will put on people to kind of not actually voice their opinion. They'll couch it in all sorts of things. Being like, oh, we want to give you information. We want to make sure you understand what you're saying. But really, these are like disciplinary things. They said they're not disciplinary, but the reality is these are disciplinary things saying, don't talk about unions. We don't want a union here. And the effect that has not just on the person, but everybody else around them. I mean, if you saw your coworker getting pulled into the office to talk to HR because they were talking about a union, you're going to learn your lesson from them. It's going to make you less likely. And that fear, that I don't know if it's a strong word, but I'm starting to get more comfortable with it. That oppression, that oppressive push, is really stagnating and really anti-democratic and unethical.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, this is impacting workers in both the U.S. and Canada. Tell me more about the, I guess, conditions that you want to improve, or is it over wages? Like, what is this union effort actually trying to accomplish here and fight for?
I think the bottom line is just having a voice for employees. And a lot of stuff kind of relates to that. You can talk about wages, you can talk about job security, talk about kind of accountability. I think that's a big thing. A lot of people feel there's not a lot of accountability at the higher end of the company. Things can be said that promised that aren't followed through with. Um, you know, uh, some of the like seasonal contracts are another thing. I don't want to get
Mm.
too bogged down to the details of that, but essentially it creates a second tier of employee where some people are in core contracts and you get benefits, a certain wage, job security, and another tier of employee are in seasonal contracts, which basically end whenever the company decides they don't need you anymore. It's a bit of a lower wage, no benefits, no security. And a lot of companies do that, and it's a seasonal business. The busiest time of the year is definitely around Christmas, but the when you have people who do that year over year, so 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in a row, it's not that these are just people here for a few months and then going off to something else. This is their job,
Yeah.
and they do just as good of a job as core staff do, in most cases, but they're not getting the same opportunities. So it's a number of things, but really it boils down to having a little bit more control over our work, bringing accountability, and having kind of a voice for ourselves.
So tell me more about, I guess, your experience. You said you're based in Toronto, right? So your experience and what more, I guess, the audience can do here to help fight and I guess raise awareness for what you're doing here.
Yeah, so I think awareness is a big thing. I'll quickly summarize where we were in the fall last year. So this is October, November 2020. We had been talking for a while amongst ourselves. We had started the union drive, and we decided that we were going to put our best foot forward here. We sent a letter to Mark Wolverton, and he's the CEO for Lush North America. He brought it over from the UK. We decided to send a letter because we're like, this is Lush. Like, they have good values. Maybe they grew really quickly. Maybe they just, have kind of let this slide for a little bit. But let's do this. Let's build this kind of company together. We want to have a union so that we have our own voice here. But let's do this in as positive and as amicable as a way as we possibly can so that we can work on just building, a better, stronger company. The way that letter was received was with anti-union leaflets that had things like, unions are businesses. Don't be tricked. Signing a union card is like signing a contract you haven't read. The general kind of fear mongering sort of stuff, as well as captive audience meetings. And this is something that I think is particularly impactful. Is they would have the vice president of the company come with a representative from HR and the manager of each department. They would stop work, pull everybody together, read these anti-union leaflets, and kind of open like a pseudo dialogue about like why they don't think this is a good thing. They'd say stuff like, we want to have a direct relationship with you. If you get a union that's going to interfere, and sometimes people would, spread the normal rumors like, if you want to get vacation time, it's going to be harder.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff. And as much as I think a lot of people can kind of see through that, it's not that you necessarily believe the things on the page, but what they're doing is they're drawing a line, and they're saying very clearly, you're going to have to go through us to get this. We're going to make this uncomfortable for you. And they highlight that message when, they do stuff like they did to the gentleman in California, where he's done nothing except for post on the Hive, and they've had him visit HR. A number of our members of the organizing committee were visited by HR to talk about stuff that we were doing in our efforts organizing. And it culminated in sort of January of this year, after I had been on a seasonal contract for about a year and a half straight. I was cut with a whole bunch of people who had been there for a long time and replaced with workers from another part of the business who weren't as involved in the union. And so people see that happening. The message hits.
Yeah, I mean that onslaught, day after day, the anti-union messaging, and even just culturally, the way we've absorbed it. I mean, I grew up in Canada as well, and in high school, I had a very negative view of unions, not for any particular reason, but just the general sentiment that I always heard, passed down is, oh, unions are bad for whatever reason, and it's that the cultural impact of that has to be, we have to, I mean, really unlearn it in a way and reteach people that no, you need a voice in your workplace, especially when it comes like to a larger company like Lush, where workers have no real representation and they have no voice. It is necessary for people to come together, for workers to come together and be able to have that collective voice to fight for their rights. And it's amazing you're doing this. What can people do at home? Is there a website that people can go to? Anything that we can do to help you with this?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do right now is you can follow us on Twitter. It's at Global Lush Union. I don't want to like the global Lush Union is far reaching. We're trying to make it cover as many people as possible because we think that anybody who works at any company, but especially at a quote unquote ethical company like Lush, should be guaranteed the right to organize without interference from the company. So we think interference from the company is ethical. So you can follow us there. We have a website you can click and you can sign a petition that we're planning to submit to the CEO of Lush North America to ask for ultimately what we'd like to see is an apology and a chance to actually get our message out. Because, with COVID and everything, we never really got that as much of a chance as the company did to get our message out, right? So when they can pull everyone aside, we can't stop work to do that. And so that's what we want. That's what we need to fix. Is we need to make sure that people, when it comes to a vote, have an informed decision here. And the company who's made that, Lush has made that impossible. And so when you share stuff that we've done, follow us, it draws attention to that, and it draws attention to Lush. And I think what we really need to focus on here is that that's not the way an ethical company should behave. An ethical company would respect the right to organize without interference. And we as sort of consumers have a bit of power here because we get to define what's ethical. Lush shouldn't be defining ethics. We should be.
Absolutely.
And so, follow us on Twitter, share our content, sign our petition, and, really let the company know how you feel.
Awesome. Well, I'll have all those links below the video in the description box on YouTube. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and discussing this.
Really appreciate it.